Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. So first we have, there is no doubt that Donald Trump is a threat to our liberties and even to our democracy, but in California, we defeat candidates at the polls. Everything else is a political distraction, Newsom said as he shut down the idea of removing Trump from the ballot, and that's a tweet from Colin Rugg. And I said, that's from Chabonet. And I said, I can't believe Gavin Newsom was a fascist still on most of the normies on the subreddit. They pretty much are all fascists, to be fair. And I think he's just, Gavin Newsom trying to run for president by appealing more moderate. I personally think, he's too insufferable to run for president. That's my thoughts on him. But, they're all kind of insufferable. So we'll see what happens on that front. Then we have, when they say fascism, they mean anything against Marxism, based upon the fact that Mussolini listed being against Marxism explicitly as one of the pillars of fascist ideology, from James Lindley on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, they use language to manipulate, not to communicate. And that's the tweet from that's what Michael Malice always says. And this is how they're using language to manipulate rather than communicate. They're saying, "Oh, everything we don't like is fascism. Anything short of the Soviet Union is fascism." And that's why you can't let people manipulate you with language like that. That's my fault on that issue. Then we have CNN caught red-handed lying about Robert Kennedy's record by selectively editing a clip. RFK Jr.'s campaign puts out this video showing the full context of his statement next to the version CNN aired, which characterizes part of his speech to mean something he didn't say. And that's the tweet from Christian M74, a post by Chabonet, and I didn't say anything on that one. Yeah, it just goes to show you that the media is going to lie, and that's why they shouldn't be trusted. The media like CNN and New York Times and all them feel entitled to your trust, and that's not true. No one is entitled to your trust, especially when they're caught lying over and over again. So that's my thoughts there. Then we have Pizza Hut franchisees lay off more than 1,200 delivery drivers in California as restaurants brace for $20 fast food wages from BusinessInsider.com by Chabonet. And, I don't think that's good. And I think that's why it's a good argument against minimum wage, because, eventually companies can't afford to pay all these minimum wage laws, and that's just going to leave more people out of a job. And that's not good, I would say, when it comes to the employment numbers. Then we have exclusive. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. denied Secret Service protection for third time. Kennedy said he'd spent almost $2 million on private security. He called DHS's decision political, saying it is part of this trend of our enforcement agencies being weaponized to serve a political agenda. And that's from Desiree.com by Chabonet. And I said, I personally would kind of agree with you, I would agree with RFK there. The government has been weaponized to serve the elites rather than the common man, and that's something that increasingly you're seeing the government go after all those it deems to be dissidents, and that's not something that I would think is libertarian. I personally I don't know if we should be paying taxpayer money for politician security, but, they gave it to Joe Biden, and I don't know if RFK Jr., he's pretty relevant too, so, maybe he could make the argument as well that he deserves it. I mean, I think, if people want to fund politician security through taxpayer money, they should be able to do so, but, I think there are better things to fund taxpayer money for, like healthcare, or universal basic income, or, school lunches for kids. So that's a good argument as well. Then we have deciding that a person who has not been charged with, let alone convicted of insurrection, is guilty of insurrection and therefore cannot run for president. That is protecting our democracy in action, from brownstone.org by Chabonet. And I said, I don't think I said anything on this one, but I think, it's not something you can't just remove people from the ballot on these fringe legal theories and expect everyone to just go with it. Ultimately, politics is ultimately what people can get, what you can get away with, and ultimately, when you're someone as a big name as Donald Trump, you can't get away with just removing it from the ballot and expect no backlash there whatsoever. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Supreme Court will reverse Trump ballot removal, but dodge insurrection question. Experts predict major reasoning that court is likely to step in quickly to similar efforts run away in other states, including New York, California, and Pennsylvania, from the EpicTimes.com by Chabannet. And I think that might be good, but it's ultimately, as I said, what people are going to willing to accept. And I think Donald Trump supporters won't accept anything less than him being on the ballot. And ultimately, they're the ones who might justify using force for their political gains if it comes down to it, like a lot of people would. But they, especially if someone with a cult like following Donald Trump, they might justify doing that. And then we have When Progressives and Conservatives Compete, Agnostics Win from ire.org by 2000 Time of Charm. And we have I guess that's from two. I think that's correct. Ultimately, everyone wants to enforce their vision of whatever their morality is on they'll use the state to enforce that. But I don't think that's the right answer. I think ultimately, we need to let everyone have their own morality and not have state enforced morality. So I guess I would agree with that. Then we have Unmasking the True Force Behind the Housing Crisis from LearnLiberty.org by 2000 Time of Charm. And I definitely would kind of agree that, government's kind of the real force because, they have all this red tape to building houses. You can't just have these small houses for homeless people. You have to have all these rules when it comes to building houses. And that's why it's so hard to build all these houses for people, especially with all this government bureaucratic bullshit. And then we have EU asylum deal proves our elite don't really believe diversity is their strength from RMX.news by Chabannet. And I would agree with that. Ultimately, I think I'm pretty pro-immigrant, but we need to be able to question the negatives of mass immigration without being shut down as a bigot for it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have You Don't Have the Right to Block Public Roads from Chabannet, and that's a link to a news article from the Buenos Aires Times. Government says it will take away welfare from protesters who block streets. And I said, ultimately, I'm a libertarian. Do whatever you want. Ultimately, it comes down to who has the force to do what. And, I personally think if you're protesting government, you shouldn't be relying on government welfare. With that being said, if you have the force to justify something, you should be able to do so. That's kind of more of an anarcho-libertarian version. But ultimately, everything does come down to who has the force to do what. Then we have Rejoice for today is the day that Senator Rand Paul releases his annual Festivus report for 2023, highlighting the government's fiscal irresponsibility and the billions of dollars of taxpayer money that the government wasted, from WashingtonExaminer.com by Chabannet. And I said I see everyone else in this comment section doing the other ingredients. They're all complaining about Rand Paul. I personally think Rand Paul is improved, but I definitely think he's one of the better libertarian voices in the government today, even if he's not a member of the Libertarian Party. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Especially, since he's trying to hold Dr. Fauci accountable. No one else seems interested in doing that. Then we have University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, sued for demoting staff member from diversity position for being white, from NYPost.com by Chabannet. And I definitely think that's not good, and that's why, I don't think the DEI or ESG agendas are all libertarian at all, because they ultimately are just forcing companies to hire people based on their race and nothing else, because well, you shouldn't be doing that. We live in a society that's increasingly just race essentialist. That can't see beyond someone's race, and I don't think that is libertarian. Racism, as Ron Paul said, is just kind of a natural form of It's just kind of a ugly form of collectivism. People need to remember that. Ultimately, we need to look for the best person for the job rather than the person with the correct skin color for the job. Then we have, even today, war makers in every country demand total dehumanization of the enemy. This is why Mr. Frame focused on dispelling the lies of the war machine from LP National on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, agreed. The state is the real enemy, not citizens of foreign countries. You got to realize that. You got to always separate a country's people from its government. The government is ultimately those who seek power over others. Well, the people, a lot of people don't like their government, even in a supposedly democratic country, let alone like the United States, let alone a more openly authoritarian country like Russia or China. So you have to always remember that. Then we have Tennessee Defend the Guard Act would push back against unconstitutional wars from blog 10thAmendmentCenter.com by Chauvenet. And I agree that would be libertarian. I don't think the government has the right to send National Guard members anywhere outside the state and especially not to foreign conflicts. And I think that's important to remember. The state doesn't have the state only has the rights you give them, especially when it comes to the branches of the force they control, like the National Guard and the military. Then we have, no matter what you do, some will find a problem with it. You'll never be conservative enough or liberal enough for everyone on your side, so do you. Don't even try to appease them. And I said from Adam B. Coleman on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, exactly. It's something that is especially true in the circle-jerking social media age we currently live in. Ultimately, you can... everyone's going to take offense. Everyone's going to be offended by something these days, so we might as well just say what you do, and if someone gets offended by it, that's on them, not you. Then we have Happy Holidays from Doctor Who 07. That's just a holiday picture, and I think Happy Holidays to everyone as well. I got my Santa hat on today, so that's if you want to celebrate whatever holidays you want, I think that's the libertarian position. Every day can be a holiday if you want it to be, but ultimately, you still need to work at least a little, because that's how, we create our resources. Then we have Bidenomics. Inflation pushes Christmas tree prices significantly beyond last year's highs, even for artificial ones, from Chauvenet, and it's from westernjournal.com. And I agree, that's just how we need to get rid of all this inflation stuff and stop this Bidenomics, which is pretty much just Reaganomics again. They're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty much have the Federal Reserve print as much money as possible and hope the people don't notice that costs are rising and the dollar keeps getting less and less valuable. Then we have severe revenue decline. California faces a record $68 billion deficit. Here's what's eating away at the Golden State's coffers, from finance.io.com by Chauvenet. And I agree that that's not good, because, ultimately, when you just spend money recklessly like California does, you're not going to end up with a very libertarian society. Then we have, can we limit the amount of posts in a period of time on the sub, from Caldwell Curmudgeon. And they said, I appreciate the subs uncensored and people of all different philosophies and debate libertarianism and public policy. However, a few individuals are trying to sell articles and posts to take away from the good faith that is required to post an uncensored sub. And I said, I do think some users post too much, but it's not libertarian to tell people what they can and can't do, and it would certainly go against the uncensored spirit of the subreddit. Then we have, maybe we need to be more draconian, from DangerousAt8554, and they said, mods be tripping, and I guess that's correct. We shouldn't be justifying draconian actions. Being draconian, I would say, is very anti-libertarian. Then we have, will the guardians of the narrative win, from mgreatness.com by Chauvenet. And I personally think, ultimately comes down to what happens. I hear there's rumors that they're going to try and shut the internet down next year so they can censor can control the narrative again. But ultimately, we need to hold them accountable as much as possible with the resources that we currently have. Then we have Venezuela seizes 4 million toys to distribute to poor children as Christmas gifts. Venezuela 2016 from TheGuardian.com, 2000 Time of Charm. And I definitely would agree that's not very libertarian. You shouldn't be seizing property without, especially if you're the government, especially if the people aren't consenting to it. And we have USDA announces new rules that could ease the number of baby formula shortage from Reason.com, 2000 Time of Charm. And I definitely think that is ultimately, I think the USDA, that's number one, we need to abolish because, they're just too restrictive when it comes to this stuff like baby formula, and that just makes it harder and harder to ship it. Then we have Festivus report on government waste from hsgax.senate.gov by 2000 Time of Charm, and I looked at it and said one of the pages was Dr. Fauci's 477,121 transgender monkey study. We live in a society. That's something that's important to remember. Government will just throw money on whatever, and ultimately they'll probably never be held accountable for it, sadly. Then we have pro-life kids booted from famous U.S. government building finally win from WND.com by Chabanay. And I personally think, ultimately we need to allow for as much free expression as possible, and that's why I think that is the libertarian decision there. And we have Nancy Pelosi purchases $5 million worth of NVIDIA call options from Investing.com by 2000 Time of Charm. And I said, even if we ban elected officials from trading stocks, they will just have family or friends do it instead. So, it's really not a problem that's easy to solve. Obviously the government is naturally a grift, and this is just another example of it. Then we have Republicans declare banning universal free school meals a 2024 priority from NewRepublic.com. And I said, ain't no such thing as a free lunch, even if you are a child. And then Clorox said, if you think making sure children or malnourished should be priority over things that impact the budget for like military spending, I said, I agree. If you want to fund free school meals through taxation, I think they should be able to do so. It's certainly better than a lot of shit our track stars currently go to, like studying transgender monkeys. And I think that's going to be, let's see if there's anything new. We have much of North America may face electricity shortages starting in 2024 by newscientist.com. And I think that's something that's how they're going to control the narrative. They're going to try and shut the internet down. And that's something that I think we need to remember, especially how they can control the resources like electricity, and how, that's essential when it comes to the free and open internet. Then we have Merry Christmas from Chabanay, and that's it's a kid asking Santa, what do you like for Christmas? And the kid says a unicorn, and he says, be realistic. And the kid says, the government doesn't violate my rights, plunder my wealth. And then Santa says, what color unicorn? I think that's a very libertarian comic there, because ultimately the government's is naturally just gonna violate all your rights and steal all your wealth, and that's something that I think we always need to remember as libertarians. So I think we're gonna wrap up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.